Hi everyone. Welcome to today's video about discipline. As you can see, I'm back in my fun hammock swing for today. It's a bit of an important and intense topic, and so I thought I would sit somewhere where I can rock and regulate my nervous system. I'll apologize in advance if this bugs you at all. I know that having a moving target when you're watching a video can sometimes be a little bit distracting. But I also like to interlay the fact that for those of us with dysregulated nervous systems, which will likely include your kiddos sometimes, there's certain really easy techniques that we can use just to calm ourselves. And so one of those is rocking. Whether it's just rocking back and forth on your feet or rocking in a swing or a chair such as I am today. So please excuse the movement if it is happening and if it bothers you at all. Now, for those of you that are new to my channel, I'm Avery. Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up for yourself and for your children, for wanting to have a healthy and fulfilled family. You're doing great. To start today, I want us to recognize where we come from, how we were parented. Many of us still have an old school ideology about discipline. We were raised in a time, especially those of us raised in Western society during the 80s and 90s, we were raised in a time where there was a lot of corporal punishment used. Now, corporal punishment is using pain, physical pain or emotional pain, to correct a bad behavior in a child. But this, in fact, is not discipline at all. This is punishment. That is simply teaching a child out of fear to refrain how they may naturally behave, because they're scared of you. And that is not the type of relationship that we want to have with our children. Discipline is teaching. We want our children to learn how to navigate the world around them, to have critical thinking skills, to have consideration for others and self-control. The goal is for them to grow into good, reliable human beings who consider the potential consequences of their own actions. We want to model good, healthy behavior. Now, this can be very difficult for many of us because, like I mentioned, we may not have had good models ourselves. It can be difficult to show the way when we haven't been taught. So we need to learn that. We want to be a fair and kind guide to help our children learn. We were raised to conform and to perform out of fear and punishment. We need to learn a different way for our children. We want to be a kind and gentle guide for them so that they feel comfortable learning and exploring the world around them. When children feel good about themselves, they inherently want to do good. Now, the biggest difference between discipline and punishment: no harm. Don't hurt your child. Don't hurt them. We want to be their advocate and their ally. We want to love them. In what relationship to you do you accept someone actively hurting you? It's just not okay anymore. We want our children to be able to come with us with any of their hurts. We don't want to be the cause of them. Now, of course, we're all going to screw up sometimes. We're not perfect. We're going to hurt their feelings. But we don't want to intentionally and actively hurt our child in a way to make them conform to the world around them. We know better now. We can do better. As parents, we want to ensure that we are responding to our children's behaviors. We want to select and apply a logical consequence versus reacting, which is just opting to punish. And it's based on personal emotions. It's based on yourself taking it personally and having some sort of affront. We want to stay calm and logical. Ask yourself, what is their behavior telling me right now? What is the need at the base of that behavior? And then we want to state what we want using clear, straightforward language. We want to focus on the things that we want to see in our children, not those that we do not. This can be difficult during testing phases when they are just pushing our buttons everywhere. But we really need to stay focused on the positive. Ignore the negative, especially in the beginning, especially when you're, just developing that attachment. But also going forward. Know your child. Be attuned to them. What are their behaviors showing you? Remember, the primary goal is to preserve attachment. It is to preserve the relationship between you and your child at all costs. Connection over correction. If your child is struggling, don't continue to correct them. Connect with them. The guidance and the modeling can come later. We need to get our kids back to a regulated state before they can move through that dysregulation. For adoptive parents in particular, but really for any parents or adults who have children in their world at this time, because as I mentioned in my attachment video, 60% of the society that we live in has suffered from adverse childhood experiences. This is childhood trauma that then has an effect on the rest of their lives. So it's important information for all of us to know that when we are looking at a child's behavior who has experienced trauma, we need to focus on that behavior and recognize that it is due to their trauma and not due to a lack of respect or love for us. To remove that, to not take it personally. They are a child who is managing in the best way that they know how, given their life experience. And in fact, often the opposite is true. Often you'll see children acting out in the place that they feel the most safe. And so while that doesn't feel fair to that loving parent, we need to just be there for our children, hold them in that space, not judge them because they're having a hard time, not force them to comply with what we want that might make our world a little bit easier. What do they need right now? We want our children to know that they have a voice. Not only do they have a voice, they can use it, and we are going to listen to it, that we want to hear it, and we want to listen. That when they express their needs, we will meet them reliably and consistently. All right, so tips for some de-escalation. Your child has gotten rocked off their central nervous system. They're obviously having some behaviors and some big emotions. So what can you do to try and bring it back down? Obviously, we want to stay calm and regulated ourselves as much as possible. Take a time out for a few moments in the other room to take a couple deep breaths and come back to the situation if you need to. But we want to recognize that our child is not currently in control of their emotions. They've been rocked. So now is not the time to prove who's in charge. Now is not the time to challenge them. We need them to come back to a regulated state so that they're out of that prefrontal cortex and able to actually think about the situation. Now, kids are not as logical thinkers as us, so we need to keep it short and sweet. We want to stay calm and in control. Allow for time and listen. Allow for time. That can be hard for us when we're rushing all over, but allow for the time and listen to what they have to say. Listen to what their body actions and their behaviors are showing you as well. And we want to acknowledge their feelings, all of their feelings, including the ones that make us uncomfortable, like sadness or anger. It makes sense that they feel these emotions. We are allowed, and we just need to process them in a healthy way. Now we want to be attuned, and how better to be attuned than ask questions. So ask your child how they're feeling. Ask your child what they need right now. Some children won't want to communicate very much. Others will. Learn your child. Now, if your child is yelling, do not yell over them. Do not engage in this competition game. You stay calm. Wait for them to bring it back down. Don't get into a yelling match. Another method of de-escalation is to allow them to have some personal space while remaining close by to respond if you're needed. We want to set our limits calmly but firmly, with the expectation that they will be listened to. Now, we don't want to demand eye contact or make eye contact for extended periods of time when our child is dysregulated. This can feel really uncomfortable to them. We also want to negotiate easy ways for our child to save face. We want to give them choices or compromise. A really good example recently in my world was that my niece got a new gymnastics outfit that she hated. She did not want to put it on her body, and she was throwing a fit about it. Now, it could have just been forceful and thou shalt put it on your body and then thou shalt not cry about it. But that's not helpful. It's not helpful to anyone or the situation. So I removed her from the rest of the world, from the rest of the humans that had eyes on her, and I gave her two choices. You put it on your body or you don't go. The choice was hers. I left her be. She put it on her body. And although she still had a bit of grump about it, she did it. And then people complimented her on it. And then she felt better and she was fine and she went. And so she was able to save face in that moment. And that meant a lot because it could have just become a battle between grown-ups and the kids. And that doesn't help anyone, and it does not help your attachment. Okay, so that was de-escalation. Now, how do we prevent crisis from happening in the first place? Well, first we can know that change represents stress to our children. So anytime that there will be a change occurring, make sure you build in extra time for your kid to get used to it. Build in some one-on-one time with them. Make sure that you're asking questions about how they're feeling and coping with the situation. Now, we also might want to try and identify times of day that are more stressful for our children. And then we want to develop structure or activities or a safe space for them to navigate through that. Perhaps being picked up from school is very stressful for them. And so we need to find a way to make that less stressful for our particular child, identifying what their needs are in that moment so that we can meet them better. Again, we're wanting to stay calm and regulated and allowing that space for our children without being lacking of emotions. We're just being a safe space. It can be super helpful to have an emotions chart up in your child's room. This identifies what the facial expression of that emotion might be, as well as some may have the word underneath, but it allows them to really understand that there are a wide range of emotions. As humans, we tend to come back to 3 or 4, but really there are a multitude. And allowing ourselves and our children to use appropriate language will make learning about each other more helpful. Now, when there's chaos in the home, we want to make sure that we create a safe space for our child to process and to just be removed from the situation. But we don't want to move them so far away from the action that they feel segregated. So find that balance. We want to reduce stress in the house overall by lowering music, keeping screens off, turning off the TV, lowering lights, and using a calm voice. And of course, it is helpful if we consistently and constantly reassure our children of their safety and of our love. That regardless of their behavior, we are not going anywhere. We are here for them. We are here to love them and guide them and help them with what is hard for them. that in itself, when they can really and fully believe that, that in itself will reduce the friction you feel in your home. Another big shift for a lot of us is this whole time ins versus time outs business. The difference in these things is being the proximity of the parent to the child. Now, as I mentioned in my co-sleeping video, the majority of Western society does make their children spend a lot of time alone, up to 60% of the day, even for babies, alone. Now, the big shift in this type of parenting is that we want to parent with closeness, not distance. Time-ins are meant to be used when there is blatant non-compliance to a boundary or a rule, or an unsafe behavior is happening. We only want to use it until the child is ready to comply, ready to have that conversation. That is logical. We're not forcing them to be there for an extended period of time simply to torture them. It's not the purpose. It is only meant as a tool to help them get back to being calm and regulated and be able to come back to the conversation. We don't want to give several attempts. It is what it is. Now, timeouts are not to be used for children. Timeouts are only to be used for the parent who needs a hot minute. Excuse yourself from the room if you have just been triggered and you are either going to burst out crying or in anger or in some volatile emotion that may make the situation so much worse and not be safe to your child. Emotional safety counts too. So for the parents, we just want to remove ourselves, go take a few deep breaths, and then come back to the situation a little calmer. Don't run away for an extended period of time. Don't abandon your child or the situation. Calm yourself and come back. Model that good behavior for your children. The final thing that I want to touch on today is the use of scripts. Now, scripts comes from the book, The Connected Parent, which I highly recommend. Children's brains just cannot process a lot of words when they are dysregulated. And I mean, let's be real, neither can adults really. So we want to avoid using too many words when we're disciplining our children, when we are trying to get them to perform a good behavior, maybe potentially versus a bad one, or for them to just look at the situation a bit differently. Some examples of scripts for young children include, "We don't hurt," or "no hurts," for not using violence. This is a huge one to me. I have a really firm boundary about not hurting the people that we love, not ever using physical violence. Never. It's so firm for me. And so having a short script to direct is good. Having a really firm response if it happens, also good. Not emotional, but direct. Other useful scripts for young kids: be kind. Use your words. Be gentle. Let's have a redo. Again, coming back to that saving face option. Allow them the opportunity for a win. Let's have a redo. Match my voice. If you're having difficulties with tone, often our young children have a lot of snotty tone and they don't really know. They are just reacting to how they feel. And so as they get a bit older, we sometimes need to point out their tone to them. And when they're young, we can just say, "Match my voice." And finally, ask permission. Of course, that's a key one for kids, right? They'll often go to grab things without asking. And so that's just an easy one to layer in. Just a quick ask. In closing, discipline is teaching. Discipline is teaching. We want to lovingly guide our children, not force them to succumb to our demands. Come back to connection over correction. Again and again. Mantra that shit. All right, so we're on to our discussion questions for today. How were you disciplined as a child? Is that form of discipline still appropriate today? How will you parent differently or the same as your parents? You can recognize from my videos the place that I come from, but many of us were also parented really well. So make sure you take those beautiful nuggets forward as well. And as always, if you found value in today's video, please like and subscribe and share and hit the ding dong button. It all means a lot to me. Thank you so very, very much for being here. You're doing a great job for you and your family. You should be proud. Much love.